Hey guys, this is Nick from Nick's Listening Space. Today we're going to talk about 3 different preamplifiers. 2 of these are actually headphone amplifiers, but for the purposes of this review, we want to look at the preamp stage. These are all unique in their own way, and I think today's discussion is going to be about their various tonal characteristics and what they bring to the table. This review isn't going to be about exactly quality, it's going to be more about tone. It's going to be about feel, slam, texture, and the overall impact that these preamplifiers can bring to the sound signature. So the Asgard really delivers this incredible clarity and dynamic punch, especially in the mid-range frequencies. And the bass on the Asgard is probably my favorite because it just has this speed, especially in the bass. It's just really textured and fast, and it's got great authority. And as a result, it's just got this great impactful sounding presence to it that I think lends itself to being a more edge of seat-like listening experience. Its Class A discrete design lends itself to having this really great mid-range presence, but at the same time, there's this great deal of detail. Really kind of lives in that 3/4 inch frequency range, or rather just above the mid-range frequencies. And so it has that full-bodied mid-range presence, I think, but maybe not as full-bodied as the Freya Plus in tube mode. And then it still has this great deal of detail. It's just a really fast, engaging experience that's really going to be really great for a lot of music. So, when I listen to a track like Burning Down the House from Talking Heads, that track in particular on the Asgard has incredible slam and just this impactful sounding authority to it. And it's just very enjoyable and makes you want to dance. The Freya Plus is the most versatile of these 3. With 3 different modes, you can switch between passive, gain, and tube mode. And so really what this is going to allow you to do is ever so slightly tweak the sound. And in my listening experiences, when I first purchased it, I had a Class D amplifier at the end of it, and I really enjoyed the tube mode. Since then, I've now purchased the line magnetic amplifier that you see here, and I'm currently running that in the chain. And so that's a tube amp. And so, I have even more flexibility now. And now that I have that, I have an even more greater appreciation for passive mode, and then also its gain mode as well. And so when we switch over to the Freya Plus and we listen to a track like Burning Down the House, compared to the Asgard, what we get is much more lush vocal presence, perhaps a little bit more of a full-bodied or smoother sound, perhaps. And I guess the best way I would describe it as just smooth. I think we still get all of the same characteristics in many ways of the Asgard. And I think the Asgard, you get this incredible dynamics or a sense of great separation without there actually being separation. And with the Asgard, we still get those dynamics or that sense of separation, but it's so much bigger and wider. And the Freya Plus really lays down a sound stage. So just comparing the vocal presence of David Burns on the Asgard versus the Freya Plus, the Asgard's going to have more bite and a little bit more edge to his vocals, whereas on the Freya Plus, there's almost this electric fuzz that's lighting up his voice, and that fuzz is sort of bleeding his voice into the surrounding instruments just ever so slightly. I mean, it's so minor. But really, I think, sometimes I want to describe tubes as having that. It's almost it's distortion essentially, right? But it's good distortion. The other thing that you're going to get with tube mode is just more bloom or more expansion or really a sense of air. And then when we switch over to passive mode on the Freya Plus, we're then given a little bit more of an analytical presence and a little bit more of that edge back into the mix. And when we compare the gain stage on the Freya to, the Asgard, I find that these two have a lot more in common than they do differences. I think that the gain stage in the Freya, it's not as edge of seat as the Asgard, but what it does is it does increase the sense of energy and dynamics compared to the tube mode. And then, so of course, the passive mode is just going to basically be no gain stage in the preamp. And then, at least in my setup, that's going to be more of a neutral sounding setup, and also going to be the leanest sounding gain stage of all of these. The Magni Piety, I think, is, in my opinion, it's about mood, it's about atmosphere, and really it's about mid-range magic. And in my experiences, I find this amplifier to just be an all-arounder. It just tonally is going to make most music sound good, even poor recordings. And that's really where I think the Piety has its strengths, is that when you're somebody that has a very large music library, the hard reality is that crappy recordings or less resolving recordings are going to not necessarily sound as good on those pieces of equipment. An artist like MF Doom, if you know MF Doom, then you know like a lot of his music has a lot of these samples that are kind of played out repetitively or one after another, or they're just a bunch of different random samples that will play. And then over the top of that, he's got this really intimate vocal presence, and there's a lot of blurring of his vocals. His vocals have never really been that crisp, or they don't have this bite or edge to them. Or you can take an artist like Haircuts for Men, which is Vaporwave, or Plunderphonics, and these tracks or this music is really being created from older songs or older samples and that sort of thing. And really, like, the purpose of this music is to create a sense of nostalgic or to create a sense of emotion with music. It's not about listening to this perfection. It's purely about emotion and mood and atmosphere. And that's where I think a preamplifier or this headphone amplifier really can shine in your setup. And you may be thinking like, well, I just need to have the best sounding setup, period. But again, like, the purposes of this music, and most of this music gets released on cassettes, right? So when you're playing that type of music on a really resolving system, it's going to really pick out or really tear apart the tracks in a way that's going to be almost too revealing at times. And so, just my final thoughts on these three things, and I want to kind of finish off this discussion by talking about these. We listen to music for emotion, and we listen to music to feel. And it's not always about listening to the greatest sounding or what we think is the greatest sounding recording or whatever. Or at least when I listen to music, I'm really breaking down the tonal characteristics of what I'm listening to. And my usual response is going to be, this is either a warmer piece of equipment or a colder piece of equipment, or maybe it kind of lies right in the middle, and I find it to be really balanced. And so if you are somebody that maybe already has a source component, and then you've got another amplifier, and you're looking to maybe change that tonal characteristic, I think, look at a headphone amplifier, because you could potentially tweak the overall sound of your setup. And so, you know, I think you look at the Asgard because you're somebody that really wants to have great texture and mid bass, but then also this very engaging experience. Like, of these three, I would categorize the Asgard to have the best prat, the best rhythm, pace, and timing. And then, you know, the Freya Plus is a real preamplifier with, you know, 5 different inputs and 3 different outputs. I think that the Freya Plus is for somebody that wants to have variety. They want to be able to tweak that tonal characteristic, or, you know, kind of make that minor tweak or whatever. The Freya Plus for me is the single greatest piece of equipment in my setup, because what it allows me to do is maximize enjoyment, no matter what format or medium, you know, rather, that I'm listening to. Lastly, like, the Piety is for somebody that just really wants to have an emotional listening experience, set it and forget it. It's for somebody that also listens to, I think, a wide range of music. You know, not necessarily like listening to a specific type of music, but I think if you're somebody that listens to a lot of music, or you're somebody that even listens to a lot of older recordings, or you listen to like old punk music or things like that, I think the Piety is going to make a great preamplifier / headphone amp for that purpose as well. And so each of these preamplifiers / headphone amplifiers is going to have its strengths and weaknesses. And I just think that it's really fascinating how, you know, if we remove ourselves from this kind of pretentious mindset about perfection and just start to recognize that what we're actually looking for is tonal color or tonal characteristics, and I think we start to open our mind a little bit more to other pieces of equipment. And I think we start to realize that making your system sound better is not always about buying the next piece of equipment that costs more money. You know, I've been in this hobby for about a decade, and I haven't had the opportunity to buy a billion pieces of equipment or whatever. You know, I've had to have a budget conscious mind throughout this, always, because I've been in college, I've been in school, or I've had other priorities, right? And so for me, like, I really want to break down this myth or this idea that in order to get better sound, you need to go spend more money, or that there's this idea that I must upgrade to more. And I think my philosophy in a lot of ways, or at least with this current setup that I have, is that this setup tends to be a more neutral, possibly a little bit more of a top-endy system. So I've always been looking for ways to add a little bit more warmth, because for me, I enjoy texture and I enjoy lots of detail, but that can become fatiguing. And so I just always want to tweak that or turn that down ever so slightly. It's like if I could have a knob in my system that could just do that, it would be incredible. Basically a knob that goes from lean to mean. Anyway, so, you know, you guys tell me what you think down in the comments below. Let me know, do you even have a preamplifier? Are you like only an integrated guy? You know, have you considered adding a headphone amplifier into your mix to tweak the overall characteristics of your sound? Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. This has been Nick's Listening Space. Until next time, bye-bye. Oh, watch my next video down below.